Question mark? Or is it just blossoming into a brand new stable called classic gaming? And does it matter at all? Doggies. Hello and welcome. I'm the OGGM. What up? Broadcasting live from Site B. We're walking to the store, and I thought I'd talk about this. It's a topic we've talked about a lot. Personally, I don't think it's a topic, but apparently a lot of other people do think it's a topic. And it centers around the 3 most dangerous letters in tabletop role-playing, OSR. And somehow OSR, which has always been a nebulous idea, has become a thing. People claim they're part of the OSR. They're in the OSR. The air is being sucked out of the OSR. They want to join the OSR. They want to leave the OSR. If you're like me, you were kicked out of the OSR. The OSR is toxic. The OSR has been posting videos about me for 50 years. The OSR hurt me. The OSR can't survive. The problem with all these statements, whether they be pro-OSR or against OSR, is these statements are referring to the OSR as if it's a tangible subject. I guess because we live in America where we have a long tradition of 3 letters meaning something important, i.e. RKO, FBI, CDC, that somehow on some very subconscious level, we associate OSR with an actual tangible thing, the same way we associate FBI with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But the Federal Bureau of Investigations is a real thing. It has a strict address. It produces content. It puts out and takes in inventory. The OSR is a nebulous idea, which started a long time ago as one thing, branched out to meaning 3 things, 4 things, sort of, and then somehow became a group. Now, I'm not talking about the Bro-SR. They are a faction within the tabletop role-playing game community. They are the NWO of role-playing. We're not talking about the Bro-SR. We're talking about the 3 letters OSR. And we're talking about a brand that just came forward, the OSR behind, because they're tired of the toxicity of the OSR, the damage the OSR is doing to the industry, and how the OSR is somehow physically affecting their ability to live successfully within the tabletop community. So a lot of people are saying things like the OSR is dying. Again, the OSR is not a thing. It can't die because it doesn't exist the way a plant exists, or a car exists, or the FBI exists, or even a style of painting exists. Like the closest relative would be like, you know, if you're of a certain painting style, like Impressionism or Cubism or post-realism. And you're like, that's probably the closest thing, but even that's not a fair comparison. Again, painting and the stuff Cubism are a physical thing, while the OSR is just sort of a band-aid that we slap on to different things to describe a way things were done in the old day. Remember, the very first letter of O is for old or other, but old. Old, and the second letter is school or system. So it established that there is a old school, that there are people who played in the 70s and 80s. They would be the old school, the first generation, as opposed to people who played in the 90s and 2000s, and then forward from the 2000s to today. So we can definitely say that there are people who are my age and older who have been gaming for a long time and could be considered the elder statesmen of gaming. I like that word much better. Elder statesmen of gaming, as opposed to the old school. I'm a member of the old school. Again, you know, you're not, because the old school isn't a thing. You're old, but your style of gaming is unique to you. There is no one catch-all term, but people are flocking away from the OSR to join this new classic gaming. And the goal of the classic gaming is to move forward without any of the baggage that the OSR contains. But the OSR baggage is not about the OSR, it's about certain individuals within the so-called OSR who have taken this nebulous word and turned it into a flag that they can fight against and shake their fist and rally against changes to the hobby. And then we get terms like you're being kicked out of the OSR, it sucks the air out of the OSR did this to me, fuck the OSR, and I'm all for the OSR. The OSR is the one true way to play. Again, the fallacy is that the OSR is a real thing, that it's a real group. It's not. It's a cheap pop word that somebody came up with a long time ago to define one thing. And then that one thing became 3 or 4 things, depending upon your personal definition. But it's not one true thing. So all these individuals who claim they're part of the OSR are basing it upon the fallacy that the OSR is something you can be part of. It's not. You know, you can agree with some of the principles, like, you know, you might agree with some of the principles of the Conservative Party or the Liberal Party or your job. But there's others you're like, no, that's dumb. But as a solid, physical, tangible, producing something, living entity, it's not. Now here's my definition of the OSR. My original definition, which is what I always thought it was, and then some other definitions I've kind of borrowed from other people, mostly Aaron the Relentless. Shout out to Aaron the Relentless. So for me, the OSR was always old school revival. That you were either, old school revival, you were either continuing to play a game you played back when you were a kid, and you're continuing to play a very specific version. For me, that would be Villains and Vigilantes 2nd edition. Despite the fact that I have every printing Jeff D has ever made of Villains and Vigilantes, from both the first to the most recent one, Villains and Vigilantes for me is Villains and Vigilantes 2nd edition. It's the edition that I'll always play, and it's the edition that I'll ever run. It's like a 40-year-old, 50-year-old edition, but I'll still play it. I still want to revive the interest in Villains and Vigilantes. And if I can't find copies for people, you know, I've got it on PDF so I can print it out. Thus, by printing it out, I keep it circulating in the market, reviving it. I don't expect to make any money off of it. I just want to share my love of classic Villains and Vigilantes, of classic Marvel superhero role-playing, of classic D6. So that's my first definition. And my second definition, which is really more of the same. My second definition of what I always thought the OSR was there's a rule set that you played, or a game you played. Let's use Boot Hill, Gamma World, Bunnies and Burrows, some of the old original games. You know, all that fun stuff. But that game doesn't exist anymore, right? It's out of print. You can't find it anywhere. You could reprint your copy, but you don't want to get in trouble. But you still want people to be able to play the rules of that system the way you played it. So, via Creative Commons and OGL and open source, you make a game that's 80 to 90% similar to the game you want to recreate, but then you change enough that it's not a direct copy and you're not violating IP infringement. That would lead us to the over 5,000 retro clones of D&D. To get to the next term of OSR, old school rules, it's taking the TSR era D&D rules, all 4 or 5 of them, recreating them in a brand new way for people who didn't get to enjoy them, but then adding a little something so it makes it uniquely yours. Why are there 5,000s? Because everybody has their unique take on D&D and AD&D. If everybody was part of the OSR, then there would only be one agreed upon retro clone, because we're all playing the same way. But we're not, so there isn't. So we have 5,000 various retro clones, which are still the basic 0 through AD&D 2nd edition rules, but we've added something. Dungeon Crawl Classic adds the Gonzo-ish. Some of them make it a little bit more darker, a little bit more mudcore. Others make it a little bit more ridiculous, and others make it like combinations. Like, I'm going to combine this book and this book and this book, but I'm also going to combine this other book to create something new, like Basic Experts White Box. So they're using old school rules, they're releasing them into the market, but they've changed enough to make it their own. So we have games like Osric and Shadows of the Weird Wizards and Dungeon Crawl Classics and even Shadow Dark. And there's like 5,000 now. And even other games that don't fall within that. We get the legacy games like Traveler, Original Traveler, Tinker's Dam, Morrow Project, Fringeworthy, Superhero 2024, games that you can't find anymore. But you have a copy, you remember what it was like, so you release a new version of that game under open source, Creative Commons, whatever, but you change it enough that you're not violating anything, but still you've put out a product that people can appreciate the way the game was played. Then, thus 5,000 retro clones of D&D who can't get their hands on it now. So those are the 2 main definitions as far as I understand them. Now, the other definition is the OSR is a style of play. I play like we played back in the day. I play exactly the same way as I played in the 70s. I play the way Gygax intended. Nothing about me has changed. We're still playing the old school ways, and all 5,000 of us are playing the exact same way. No, you're not. The OSR is not a thing. Stop trying to make it a thing. You're not playing the exact same way you played back in the 80s. No one is, because you've changed, the environment has changed, the world has changed, your brain has changed. You are not the same person you were 40 years ago. Fuck, you're not the same person you were 10 minutes ago. And if your only linchpin to the OSR argument is that there's a bunch of us who play this old style way, well, that's not true. Because for every person who said they played X in the 80s, I have found an equal number of people who say they played Y in the 80s, or even other versions. We know from multiple conversations in the past, but I and several other people did not play old school D&D the way some of these rules as written old school mudcore grimdark people would play. And we don't know anybody who did. I play the Southern California, West Coast, grognard, Arduin style, or Gonzo, as Venture would call it. So that for me is my old school. And whenever somebody comes to me and says, no, we did this, this, and this, I'm like, no, you didn't. I've played with hundreds of people. None of them have ever done that. If you did it, then that's unique to you. But if you want to convince me there's a large group of people who all play the exact same way, and that is what constitutes the OSR, that is what allows you to define that the OSR is a thing, well, that's a false presumption. At best, the OSR was a label we could staple onto things to help sell them. My game emulates a specific style that people enjoyed in the past. It's an OSR game. My game uses rules from older editions or legacy games that are out of print. It's an OSR game. So yeah. So going forward, we have the people who blame the OSR for everything that's wrong with their lives, right? We know they're out there. We know individuals who post multiple videos complaining about the OSR and how the OSR did this and that and this. But really what you're talking about is one or two individuals, not the OSR in general. The OSR did not do this. It can't do it because the OSR is not a thing. The OSR did not sit down in Lake Geneva in an underground bunker and all decide as one that they're going to focus their massive amounts of Illuminati energy to ruin your life. That never happened. Stop blaming the OSR for what's wrong with your game. And there's also people who want to join the OSR who proclaim how great it is because the OSR allows them to continue to play the same way they did. And if you're not down with the OSR, they've got two words for you. And again, there's the fallacy in the statement is referring to the OSR as it is a tangible organization like the NWO or the CIA. And it's not. You can't join the OSR because there's no OSR to join. It's simply saying, again, I'm playing an old game and I like these old rules and I want to share these old rules with some other people. And we played a very specific style when I was in the 80s. Sidebar, no you didn't. And I want to still play the same way today. Sidebar, no you can't. Or close enough. You know, one table might be like, we don't pay attention to torches. And another table might be like, no, we're mudcore, we're grimdark, we're hardcore. Definitely when you are out of torches, you are out of torches. And then the shadow dark gets that much more dangerous, right? But that's individuals, it's not a group. And now we've reached the point where people are talking about the death of the OSR, that the OSR is dying. Well, in a very real sense, that's true because a lot of us elder statesmen of the hobby are reaching our 60s, our 70s, even our 80s. There are several of the game's creators who are sadly no longer with us. There's been plenty of the first generation who are, creating the game and playing the game in the 70s who have shuffled off and sailed west. And there's plenty more who were playing in the 80s who have also just gotten too old or left us, or whose lives have taken them a direction where they can't be part of the gaming community. So in a very real, tangible, yes, a certain aspect of gaming culture is fading away, and it is very important to keep some memorial of that style, of those individuals, without forcing some false narrative like Wizards of the Coast did with their documentary, or without using it as an excuse to bully people like Griff was doing with Harmony Gringer. So that part is important, but every other part isn't. The OSR can't die because the OSR doesn't exist. And as long as there's one person out there, whether they've been gaming for 50 years or 5 minutes, who's decided, I want to use this label and slap it on my product because I want to emulate an older style of play, then it can't really ever die. Maybe it'll change. Maybe the faction will change from the OSR to classic gaming. And maybe classic gaming will be a positive resource for maintaining the traditions of the hobby, as well as embracing the positives of the new hobby. But the same toxic people are gonna stay toxic no matter what label you put them on. MJF is still MJF no matter what faction he's in. Whether you're cheering him or booing him, Ric Flair is still Ric Flair. And Ric Flair is never going to change. So just because someone's leaving the OSR to join the classic gaming, you're still the same person. It's not up to classic gaming to make the game more positive. It's up to the individuals to decide, I want to leave this toxic mindset behind while maintaining everything good about the tradition of the past 50 years. Remind people that there were other ways to play. There are other games out there that going forward into 2025 through 2030, you have alternatives to check out besides the ever-present oligarch that is D&D 6e. The best way to hurt Wizards of the Coast is to teach people about older games. When somebody says, hey, can we convert 5th edition to Cyberpunk? You go, no, because there is a Cyberpunk game. Let's play that. When somebody goes, hey, can we convert 5th edition to superheroes? You go, no, because there are superhero role-playing games. Let me show you my favorite. When somebody says, well, I want to do Grimdark, but I also want to keep 5e. Can we do that? You go, no, let me show you Shadowdark, or any of the other games that are embracing the best of the two. If the OSR is going to survive, it has to accept that there is a new thought pattern, and we have to be willing to create handshakes across the border between the old fucks like me who are dying off, the young Turks who are entering their 20s and 30s, and then the next generation who are just starting out. Handshake, here's a lot of cool stuff we used to use. Here's a lot of cool stuff that we're currently use. Can we work together to keep this idea alive? And in that sense, well, the OSR can't die. But to say things like, well, it's sucking all the air out of the OSR. No, it isn't. It can't, because the OSR isn't a thing. Well, the OSR did this, this, and this, and said this, this, and this, and they're toxic this, this, and this. No, the OSR didn't do that, because the OSR isn't a thing. Individuals might have said horrible things about you, but that's not my fault. That's not the dozens of other people I know who have nothing to do with that's fault. Well, we're kicking you out of the OSR, OGGM. You can't kick me out of the OSR, you bloody jerk. Because there's no OSR to kick me out of. If by kicking me out of the OSR means you don't want to associate with me, well, that's fine, because you were a toxic bastard and I didn't want to associate with you. Saying things like, I can't wait to join the OSR. Well, you can't join the OSR. There is no OSR to join. Right? So I wish classic gaming all the luck in the world. I'm very happy if there are even 10 people out there who want to have a happy medium between the old and the new and keep this idea going forward for the next generation. Because we need to. We need to keep the old ideas fresh. I'm gonna be dead soon. Most of the people I played with as a kid are dead or will be dead sometime in the next 20 years. Who's going to tell the next generation about classic D&D, about classic Traveler, about classic Villains and Vigilantes, about Superhero 2024, about the kid who did the head of Vecna, right? Who's going to share those stories? Who's going to tell the Roger and the Fireball story once I'm gone? We can keep that aspect of the OSR alive. But as for the toxicity, the gatekeeping, the name calling, the death threats, the I'm better than you, I have more experience than you, that all shit, I will be perfectly happy if that dies. Anyways, that's just my 2 cents on it. You can agree with me or disagree with me. Is there toxicity in the other ones? Of course there is. There's toxicity in the 5e community. There's toxicity in the Critical Role community. Basic Expert just did a whole video about tribalism and toxicity and the minmatics of gaming. which I'll link when I get back home. But yes, anytime you get more than 2 people together, you create a tribe. And anytime something that shows up that threatens the tribe, you get the toxicity. So no, the OSR isn't guilty alone. Critical Role fans, 5e fans, people are very passionate about their sport. And I'm sure if we don't have toxic Shadow Dark fans yet, we will. Because anytime we create a tribe, and anytime that tribe encounters something that looks different or thinks different, we lash out. I'm guilty of it in some ways, and I'm one of the more open DMs I know. We're all guilty of it, even if we're doing it unconsciously.
Show me your dick!
I don't have one, show me yours! That didn't come out right. All right, so yeah, it's not the OSR is guilty. I could do multiple videos about the toxicity of Critical Role fans. I could do multiple videos about the player agency, combat wheelchair, Sparkle Troll 5e people. But the topic today is not the toxicity of Critical Role or the toxicity of other gaming groups or the death of other gaming groups. It's about the OSR. It's about the comments that the OSR is dying. So, going forward, obviously, truthfully, the only game you should be playing is the ones I wrote. And I think we can all agree that the best way to resolve all these problems is if you all just drop every other game you're playing, head on over to drive-thru, head on over to the Postmortem Games site for drive-thru and pick up Cess Gears and Ammo issue number 1, Cess Gear and Ammo issue number 2, A Fistful of Goblins, and Goblin Galactic, or head on over to Red Room and pick up the Wretched Vigilantes bundle, links down below. That would bring us all together. Down with the OSR, up with the OGGMSr, right? Yeah! Yeah! That sounds dumb. Yeah, you should do that. Till next time, have a great day. I'll talk to you later.